And I'm going to share my screen. And y'all can see it, right? Hello? Well, I'm going to assume everybody can see it. I know it's Tuesday, but it feels like a Monday, huh? When we left off, we were talking, we don't have that many more to go. We're getting there, yay! When we left off, we were talking about albumin and the other blood tests that can and possibly you might see ran. One of the other ones is that's common is protein. Well, we started learning as we progressed mod through mod. Proteins do a lot of things in our body. Okay, it's not just something that we think of when we think nutrition. We know that a body needs a certain amount of protein, the nutrition form, to function, right? We know the liver stores it. We know that too much of it can be damaging on the kidneys. We learned about these things. So we could see why a protein test would be something that a doctor would order, right? It can also help decide if certain medications are working properly, dehydration, or somebody's just really overworking themselves. All right. So this is common reasons. A total protein measures the overall state and the nutrition of the body. It can also kind of give a peek at the liver and say, hey, yeah, your liver's handling this, it's doing well. Total protein is rarely an increased number, okay? When we do see that, normally one of the first things we see or we think is dehydration, because dehydration affects all of our tests negatively. And it also could be due to a medication. I have also seen total protein numbers that have been increased due to an excessive, and when I mean excessive, I mean an excessive amount of protein intake, and where they were absolutely zero to no carbohydrates and just stacking protein on protein. So everything in moderation, correct? And then I guess the opposite would be, if if the total protein levels were low, different things like that, then they would worry about, person's nutritional state or possibly other medical related concerns, kidney function, liver function, stuff like that. Bilirubin, and most of us, if we had kids, we're familiar with this one. We know that the bilirubin is when a baby's first born, all of their organs are grown, but some of them aren't fully developed and kicked into that, jump start motion on some babies. And we know the lungs are one of them, and sometimes the liver can be the other. Now, we know that the main source of our bilirubin is the liver. Okay, so in babies, what happens is because the liver hasn't caught up, they may have an excessive amount of bilirubin. Okay, now in babies, what they do with this is they do the UV lights, and it actually helps absorb and soak up that excessive bilirubin until the liver has time to catch up. And that's why you've seen sometimes the babies will be under lights like that. But bilirubin, as far as other, besides the newborns, it can really let us know, give us a tiny look into the liver, spleen, possibly even bone. And there's a wide variety of diseases and processes where you might see an increase in bilirubin. Elevated levels are found very commonly with gallstones, gallbladder issues, or biliary obstruction. We talked about the biliary tree and how the liver the pancreas and the gallbladder all are connected right there. That was that when something goes wrong there, usually it's a gallstone or some type of blockage. We see high bilirubin levels in alcoholism. You can see it in certain anemias. You probably see it with somebody who had a liver disorder. And then here's a strange one. One of the things that they look for if they're worried about somebody who might have a pulmonary embolus is a really elevated high level of bilirubin. So a very big range there. But usually we think of it liver, gallbladder, that area, right? All right, now this one is also going to be, it's common, but it's not something that you'll probably see as often as some of the other ones. That we want to know alkaline phosphate. We abbreviate this and call this an ALP. Okay, so we know in our body that our body is constantly trying to maintain what? Homeostasis, right? And that balance has to be maintained. And if it's not, we can have our body become alkaline, acidic, and that changes our teeter-totter, right? And doesn't allow for a nice balance. So one of the reasons that they might run this test is because when our homeostasis is thrown off, we might see these enzymes in excess in the liver, the gallbladder, the intestines. It says here that it's a test very useful in the assistance of evaluating bone and liver function. Elevated levels, 9 times out of 10, when you start seeing this, think dehydration. And I know every single one of these, I keep popping up, dehydration, but I hope that that lets you see how very important that keeping our body hydrated not only is going to keep us healthy, it is key to maintaining homeostasis. Okay, we also see this level elevated with people who have gone into a cirrhosis state of the liver. A decreased level in this is what I always found kind of interesting. Well, Cushing syndrome, we found out about that. Remember that was that moon pie face shape, right? And it dealt with that. We might see a raise with that. But here's something that's kind of weird. Say some person was just obsessed with licorice. Well, licorice is a natural substance. And natural licorice can actually affect, if you eat it in high amounts, it can actually affect and cause an issue with your alkaline and your homeostasis. So no licorice OD. I love black licorice. I'm like that one in the 4,000 people who actually love it. That's my favorite. I could just sit there and eat those like constantly. But wouldn't want to do it because it could affect your ALP. You may also see this test slightly decreased if a patient's on diuretics and estrogen, because the estrogen being a hormone could have an effect, and then the diuretics definitely because we're flushing fluids, and that's going to change the homeostasis. All right, so these right here, I call these the liver test, and we already know why the liver's so important. And we already know why we would be running so many tests for the liver, because we know not only does it store and it produce and it regulate and it filter, it does so many things that we need to keep it healthy. And when we go in and we have blood work, if something comes back, slightly saying it's abnormal, we're going to dig deeper. We're going to find out. We're going to want to get to the bottom of that. And one of the tests that we can run is, we call it an AST. You may also hear it referred to as S-DOT, okay? And it stands for aspirate aminotransferase. And basically, we see this when it's abnormal. We see it with liver disease like cirrhosis, but we also see it with patients who have recently had a heart attack. And there's physiological reasons. And if we go back and we think about the liver and we think about the cardiovascular system and we think about our heart, we remember how everything like that is connected. So we can see there's a correlation between everything and its connection to maintaining that homeostasis. So when you see this elevated, I want you to think most of the time liver damage, cirrhosis, but it could also mean a recent heart attack has occurred. All right. This is not a test to determine if a patient is having or had a cardiac event, like a myocardial infarction or heart attack, but it can be used in addition to the other cardiac enzyme exams. Elevated levels, we see this with musculoskeletal disease, pancreatitis, trauma, like in the body, mainly like a state of shock, and heat stroke. And heat stroke, when you go into, that's a form of shock as well. So elevated is when we start having most of the time I've seen it with, like I said, liver issues or states of shock when I've seen tests that were elevated. Decreased, this is for like chronic liver diseases like cirrhosis. This is most common, is it's going to be decreased. You also, this is something that's really important, are diabetic patients. And we've mentioned diabetic ketoacidosis. This is a very, very dangerous state. And we call that DKA. And that stands for the diabetic and the keto and the acidosis. DKA, when our patients experience DKA, they have an extremely unbalanced homeostasis. All of their levels are going to be thrown off. They are in an acidotic state. That means that everything is just really, and that's what the goal in the treatment with this state is, to get it normal. So yeah, we would see the body, what I guess what they would say would be like compensating. So DKA, we might see it decreased. Hemodialysis, what was this? Think about it, hemodialysis. When people go in for kidney dialysis, right? They're having their blood cleaned and transfused back. And when they've had kidney failure or partial kidney damage. So it might be see the levels decrease there. Now, excessive exercise, certain drugs, and pregnancy, these can alter these two, this result for this test, okay? So that would be something a doctor would take into consideration. Oh, well, she's pregnant, okay, so, or oh, they're an Olympic athlete, they're training, or something like that, right? Now, we go a step further, and this is very liver focalized, is we think of, I never say this right, it's I've never been able to say this, alanine aminotransferase, or ALT. And that's what we're going to call it by, is it's ALT. Or this test is no, ALT is a liver test, and then the serum glutamate pure. Yeah, let's say glutamic purveic transmase, are the SGPT or GPT. You can say, because it's not something that I'm familiar with saying, it's just these are very 99% of the time you're going to hear it called the ALT and the SGPT or SGOT. And all of these tests are usually will be kind of lumped and thrown in there together. So you'll see usually when a doctor orders that first set, they'll order this as well. The ALT or the SGPT, sorry, my dyslexia is kicking in, is an enzyme, like I said, that we see with the liver, okay? And it's not uncommon to see this with people who have other type of hepatic, like bile duct and related type of diseases, and pancreas, gallbladder, stuff like that. But mainly what we're looking for when we run an ALT or the GPT, right, is we're looking to see how the liver and that whole biliary area is functioning, but mainly focusing in on the liver. So it's another liver test. You have your ALT or your GPT is elevated. This probably means that you do have liver damage or some type of dysfunction. All right. Small amounts of elevation are normal in some people, but they also could be related to cardiac and renal stress on the heart and the kidneys. All right, so we're gonna keep moving on. Diabetic tests. Now there's multiple tests that we run for our diabetics, okay? When the most common one is a blood glucose sugar, right? And I actually been taking mine because I told you mine was really elevated the other day. And I've been poking myself when I wake up in the morning. I'm poking myself 2 hours after I eat and poking myself before bedtime. So I'm just, my fingers are a little, sensitive right now. And we do that specific test, and that's something we can do in the office. And we check the patient's blood glucose level. And that lets us know how their pancreas is functioning and how they're maintaining right then, right there. It's a quick, fast look. Now, is it always 100% like be able to tell you everything that's wrong? No, because we usually need a lot of those numbers, and we kind of round them together and we see the average. And that's what this next test is. This next test is an amazing test. It's called a hemoglobin A1C. And what it does is it basically can do, you say, I'm checking my sugar all of this time. And then I want to show y'all something. I check my sugar and I get numbers, and all of those numbers add up and mean something, right? So that's what a hemoglobin A1C does, but it takes blood from the body, and it can basically evaluate where your blood sugars have been and give you a number. That number is very, like, almost on point. If it's past the normal level, you're diabetic, right? And it really, really, really is key for monitoring and maintaining patients who are pre-diabetic, like myself, and patients who are diabetic. And I'm going to show y'all here. This is, it's called My Glucose Buddy. And his little smiley face, and whenever I put my numbers in, and you can see I put before breakfast what I ate, that kind of thing. But my average for today is 134 because I woke up, my blood sugar was 118. And this tells me the deviation between them. I don't have a hemoglobin A1C because it takes a few weeks for it to guess that average, okay? But my overall running right now is 143, even though we can go back and look. I've had numbers as high as 180, 183. So, and if y'all remember when we talked about the endocrine system, we know that anytime a patient has a blood glucose level over 200, that's diabetic. And if a patient wakes up and they have a fasting blood glucose over 110 more than a few times, that's impaired as well. So there's different, we already know about the different stages, pre-diabetes and diabetic, right? And we know about gestational. But why these tests are so important, because they allow us to stay right on top of our patients' their pre-diabetes or their diabetes. It allows us to monitor medication and to find out which one's going to be the most effective. Now, sometimes the doctor might order a glucose tolerance test, a GTT. So write that down. Usually that's done during pregnancy, and it's used to detect pregnancy-induced diabetes. And something I found out not too long ago is if you had gestational diabetes with any of your children, you are at a massively high risk of becoming a type 2 diabetic 10 to 15 years down the road. And I was gestational with Brian, so it's what, 15, 16 years. So yeah, it does line up. Their facts are right on. Now the problem, where did I go? Oh, the problem with this is it's horrible. It's this really syrupy flavored drink, and it's just full of sugar. The patient drinks it. We usually draw blood before they drink it. Then we draw blood at 30 minutes, an hour, it just depends. And we do it again at 2 hours. And what we're wanting to see is we're wanting to see how their body is reacting to the immediate dose, the middle, and towards the end, if they're able to process all of that sugar and get it out of the bloodstream. And remember, that's called a GTT. And this one, the average, that's that hemoglobin A1C. These are two very important tests you need to be familiar with. Okay, this is just talking, and I'm going to post a video for this. This is talking about using an automated hemoglobin A1C test there in the office, okay? And I've actually got a video, so we can skip down. It talks about how you have to hold it the right way and prepare it. And rather than read all this, the video just does a much, much better job. Okay. Phenylketonuria is a congenital disease. It's caused basically when you have a metabolism of a certain amino acid, the phenylalanine, and if that protein is not metabolized, it can actually result in not just mental retardation, it can result in overall a progressive rapid decrease in a patient's longevity, life, and well-being. This test is always that's called a PKU, right? And we most of us who've had babies, if you've had that, you know, oh, okay, yeah, my baby had the PKU. And this test is always performed on our newborns. It's usually done right there in the hospital, and it is done using a hill stick, and they take the drops of blood, and I'm going to post a video on how to obtain this. They place the drops of blood in these 3 different round cardboard slots, and then they're able to send the test in. But it's routine, and when I say it's routine, I mean it's like I don't know of babies that are born in a hospital that don't have it performed. Mono testing. Now I know we've talked already about mono, and we know mononucleosis is when you get infected by the Epstein-Barr virus. So when you test mono, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for some sign of either increased monocytes or something that tells us that patient's been exposed to Epstein-Barr. And infectious mononucleosis, my son had it in November, and it's what, September? And he still has a tiny bit of, here and there fatigue from it, because that's what mono does. Mono, for usually like the first month, it knocks you down and you have no energy. You are completely drained. And we actually have the ability as MAs to do a quick mono test there in the office. Sometimes doctors will do that and still draw blood to send out just to be certain, and that's the best practice. One of the reasons we always usually will do a strep test with mono is because if it's mono and strep kind of like to go hand in hand with one another, and you see a lot of patients. And that CBC is going to give us an overall view, because like we learned, of all of the blood cells, how they're doing. And yeah, the monos, it might say test positive for mononucleosis in your rapid test you do in the office, but we want to look at all the cells. We want to make sure it's not something else, okay? Because it could be other type of diseases, like different leukemias and stuff like that, that could cause to show up as an increased monocyte or something. So the doctor usually will perform, even if they do the rapid result in the office, they'll perform a CBC along with it. Yeah, and the symptoms, fortunately, he really didn't run a fever, but he did had a headache and it's swollen glands and fatigue. And that's what it does. We know that with like most viruses, once you have that kind of sticks around. And Epstein-Barr virus is being linked to more and more debilitating diseases later on in life, more so in women than in men. So having this test done, if the doctor suspects it, is important. And this is going to talk about how to do it. And of course, I believe I've already posted this video, but I'll go back and I'll double check. All right. And then after that, that's it. We're done. That is hematology and the phlebotomy. And I have got, like I said, a couple of videos I'm going to post for y'all. But besides that, we're good. And if y'all have any questions, let me know. If you need any help with anything, let me know. Okay? And please make sure you leave the Teams meeting. All right? Thanks, guys. Bye.